Hello, Sharmi. Today we are with Sharmi Albrechtsen. She is the CEO and founder of Smartgurlz. So I first learned of Sharmi on Shark Tank in 2017, where she was successful in negotiating a deal with Damon John, right? But you also had, in addition to the other panelists, Sir Richard Branson was there as well, right?
Yeah, that was exciting.
So that had to be an interesting presentation. At any rate, years have gone by and you've really grown and moved forward with both your products as well as your company. And recently, you're also on the WeFunder platform, so that basically anyone can invest now in Smartgurlz, which is very exciting. So I wanted to ask you a question, start off with your company. What is your product and what is your target market, Sharmi?
Sure. Thank you so much, Alan, for hosting me on this program. And happy to talk about Smartgurlz and where we're going and where we are. So yeah, I'm Sharmi. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Smartgurlz, and we started out in 2017. Our vision was really to be like the product for girls to learn STEM. So we're a digital learning company focused on girls. But last year we actually started expanding our mandate and really looked at girls and underserved learners, such as minority students as well. So really, taking them. What we found was that if we wanted to get to as many kids as possible, where do you find them? In school. And in order for you to be in the schools, you also had to offer something for the boys. And so, we've done that. But here's like a little package. This is our Smartgurlz box. And here you can see there's a boy in there and a girl. And
Excellent.
so it's a robot that you learn how to code on the floor, and you can interchange the characters. And the idea with Smartgurlz and the one with the boys is called SmartBuddies, is that kids get an understanding of how coding works and computer science. So really simply, we have like a block coding program. You get to maneuver your robots on the floor with your characters, and then you can make up stories and adventures for them.
Excellent. So expanding that sounds like that's been definitely a positive thing for your company. How did you actually come to found Smartgurlz and now SmartBuddies?
Yeah, so I started Smartgurlz quite honestly because my own daughter was struggling in math, and I was trying to find fun things for her to do because I was a learning specialist, and at the time, through like my work in communications and heading up a nonprofit organization for both adults and kids with learning disabilities, we had made a lot of play therapy programs. And what I found was that what was really successful, especially with kids, was them being able to identify themselves in the exercises. And so I thought, all right, if somebody is struggling in math, what can I do? I can show them applied math, how to use mathematical concepts in an active way, in an active learning way. I couldn't find anything on the market. I brought home a Lego Mindstorm. So it was a complete failure. I ended up losing $250. She hated it and hated the interface. And I thought, how is this possible? And then when I started really thinking about it, well, it was really masculine. This was for an 8-year-old girl. All of the robots were like, either tanks, and they had guns and bazookas and just, military style things. So, I'm sending her this message that, robotics and, computer science is for boys. And so I thought, okay, here's an opportunity. When I started looking into it, my daughter wasn't alone. Actually millions of girls, drop out of STEM by age 13. So there was my, epiphany where I thought, okay, there's an opportunity here.
Excellent. So sort of continuing that topic from an entrepreneur standpoint, obviously as an outsider looking in, congratulations on your overnight success. That's how it looks like to a lot of people, right? Looking in. I imagine lots of hours, and you can see through the product, went into this. But could you talk a bit about some of the challenges that you ran into and what you had to go through a bit to become the CEO?
Yeah, well, I mean, because it was my concept and my vision, becoming the CEO wasn't, that difficult. But, anyone could really start a company, at the end of the day, but making a successful company, that's another story. One that actually has traction, has products, the rest of it. Honestly, like I started out bootstrapping, which meant that I actually had a second job for about 2 years. So, until we got to a point where we could clearly see the path to success, I kept a job because I have a family and I have to put food on the table, and I couldn't just go off and do whatever I wanted. So I needed to have some income coming in. So during the 2 years of bootstrapping, it was really tough because I would work a full-time job, then come home and then work on the startup, and then spend all weekends working on the startup as well. And at the time, we were still creating the products. We were really lucky to get a government grant. So the first money that came in was a small check. It was only $100,000, but it was enough for us to go, okay, just gives you confidence when you win a grant like
Yes.
that, or your first money. And that gave us enough money to create like some prototypes that we took to, and enough money to go and test it out in the marketplace. So what we did was we made 6 hand painted beautiful models. They were so well done that they looked like they were produced. We took them to the World's Toy Fair. So we took them to Germany, and we went there and we said, okay, we got the tiniest booth possible, and we just wanted to see if anybody was interested. And we ended up with like 300 names, and somebody
Right.
wanted to buy like containers full of it. And at the time, we weren't even producing them, and we were like, okay, we didn't even have packaging. I mean, it was just like, what? So when we walked out of there with 300 names, it was easier for us to raise funds because we could clearly see that there was interest.
Excellent. And so another development I've seen from the time when I first saw you on Shark Tank to now, looking at your WeFunder, um, offering, is your team has grown. Can you
Yes.
talk a bit about your team, how you came to bring your team together, and maybe some of the strengths that it adds to SmartBuddies?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'd say one of our fantastic team members is their CMO. And being able to, because we were on Shark Tank, that helped us attract some better people to join the company, even though we were still pretty small. He's a former executive vice president of Leapfrog, a vice president from Hasbro. So, I mean, having someone like him really helped us be able to attract additional investors. And I mean, he saw the opportunities immediately and really liked like the value proposition of Smartgurlz, and saw the opportunity as someone who had been working within the industry for many years. And then our chief creative officer, Carrie Byron, we met her through like again, more connections and
Right.
LinkedIn. And someone had said to us, "Oh, you should really talk to Carrie Byron. She's one of the first female hosts on the Discovery Channel. Has really been, one of the one of the top opinion leaders in STEM education for girls and for kids in general. So I've been working with the White House science. They have a White House science program. So we were able to pull her in, which is great. So yeah, we've really, and then my CTO, our co-founder, I mean, he's my husband. So that was an
Okay.
easy one.
You didn't have to look
We
far for
got
that, right?
roped in immediately.
Excellent. Yeah, and I remember Carrie from Mythbusters. She was great on that
Mhm.
show, and again, it made science practical. Back to your, the whole mission of what you've done. So that's great. So switching topics a bit, I would like to more focus on the ed tech area because that is the area where your company is primarily positioned, although it's more expansive than just that. But talk a bit about the major areas. You talked a bit about how you founded it, but from a STEM area and as our STEMino competition, we look at how do you make learning fun, which is one of the areas beyond EdTech I see, your company and your product being. So talk a bit about that EdTech space and what it's taken to address that area.
Definitely. So, I mean, ed tech is many things, and you can be You can learn from home, you can learn for after school, you can learn in school. I'd say that like when we started Smartgurlz, we started in a very much like, I would say on the fringe of ed tech, which is considered like the consumer world. So, I mean, we wanted to be a consumer education product. And if you look at some of the companies that are out there, except for Leapfrog, I mean, Hasbro, Mattel, the rest of them, they are not really interested in education. They're interested in play, and toys in general are there for play. And if you get, if you get educated, great, but that's not their main mandate. I mean, and ours was, and I think it was difficult to be in that space, quite honestly, in the toy world where, things are very disposable. They're there for like a brief entertainment. And if they gave your child an hour of happiness, it was good enough. But then, how much were you willing to pay for that? I mean, we had like, pretty sophisticated robots that you could code that had
Yes.
Bluetooth, and they were expensive. I mean, $100. So we had to kind of, really look at the value proposition of that. And honestly, we did struggle like, in the beginning, as a consumer product. Luckily, like Pittsco Education saw us and saw what were we doing in the after school space and approached us. Pittsco Education is a large education distribution company. They were the partner to Lego Education for 20 years, exclusive distributor to them. So, we were really, excited when they approached us and said, hey, we would like to, take your products, integrate them into our company, and make them part of our portfolio and sell them to schools and after school programs. And that's really how you want to get there, because it's really hard to break into the space otherwise if you don't have contacts and connections. They have like 40 sales reps around, across the country, and they go and visit schools and they visit principals and they visit superintendents, and that's what you need in order for you to really get out there. It's a $40 billion business, but there's a lot of gates, and there are gatekeepers there, and in order for you to get through. So we were really excited about SmartBuddies, for schools, and this year was supposed to be our big launch, and then COVID hit, so that was a bit tough, and it kind of like, like ruined our launch, and we were pretty upset about it. But I said, you know what, like our mandate is to educate kids, so if they're not at home, or sorry, they're not at school, then let's get them at home. And so we created something called Camp in a Box. And this summer we educated 1,000 kids. We sent the box at home with the robot, and then all the camp materials, and then they took a 2-week camp with us. And it was so successful that we're now looking at expanding that platform. We have something for the holidays coming up, and yeah, and that'll be something on another business. In addition to what we're doing with schools through Pittsco.
Excellent. And yet another thing an entrepreneur does, right? There's a problem. Okay, how do I make a solution and move forward? So congrats on that. So one of the other things that I saw, so EdTech, similarly, we've done a lot with Stemino with schools, both college and high school. And quite frankly, some of the most progress we've had is the grassroots, where they, the kids like you and pull you in, which it sounds like very similar to what's happened, from what you've done. As well as the other area that I see that you touch on is the neurodiversity or various type of learners, which is one of the things I like about learning by doing, or project-based learning as it's also known, or learning while having fun, which some of the products I would say from what I've seen with your product, they'll try to make it fun, but it's just not. I know when our kids were growing up, like,
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, it's educational, but it's not fun. So congratulations on being able to bring those together. But have you seen a benefit to the neurodiverse community as well with your product?
Oh yeah, completely. I mean, even with like SmartBuddies, which is for boys and girls, I mean, if you looked at the demographics of who we taught over the summer and some of the partners that we were able to attract, I mean, Black Girls Code did 300 kids this summer using our materials, using our camp materials and our products. And so there you go, 300, young Black girls got, inspired this summer. And also the demographics of our own camps, where 70% were ethnic minorities. So, definitely parents are seeing like the opportunities in STEM, and kids are getting excited about, which is great. So, I think we're at a turning point right now, and I'm hoping that we can be part of that conversation. I mean, we're definitely not the only one, but being part of the conversation to to make it happen for these kids, so that they start seeing themselves in STEM. Like, one thing that's unique about SmartBuddies is that we have stories attached to every single character. And so not only are you learning the basic skills of coding, but when you read the story, you realize, oh, how can I use coding in an everyday environment? How can I use it in my job, my potential STEM job? How can I use it in my STEM education, a preference? So we're trying to give them like a more of like a holistic view of STEM, instead of, oh, I took a coding class, but I don't know, it was fun, but I don't know what to use it for. And, I probably won't, major in it because everyone else is, going for liberal arts or something else. Right. So, here you actually have like little, almost like mentors or case studies, people, role models who are doing it and who look like you.
Excellent. And if I can delve a little bit further into the diversity and inclusion, not to put you on the spot if you can't think of anything, but any insight that you had from going from Smartgurlz into SmartBuddy from the gender as well as the underserved? Are there any insights where you thought maybe it would be one way, and then in real practice you've learned that there was something to adjust to?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I was worried that boys would not find it interesting. Like we know, it's funny, like when we had only Smartgurlz and we would go to an event where there'd be boys and girls, I mean, you couldn't even get the device in a girl's hand, because like the boys just like elbowed their way up and then would just be like, and they're really good at it, right? So, I mean, they have these kinds of products at home. Like, they probably have like Lego robots and, other kinds of robots. So, they were able to maneuver them. But then when you ask them, like, oh, would you like this for Christmas? They're like, oh, no. I know, well, never want that. No, I had fun playing with it, but, they didn't want one for Christmas or anything. And so like we had to bring the girls forward. So, but that said, in a school environment where, it can be a little bit judgmental, I was really worried that a lot of boys would be like, ooh, doll, oh, I don't play with dolls. Or they would have a really like, even with their camps, I was worried that the boys would be like, ooh, I'm like outnumbered. Or a lot of our male characters are not the traditional male action doll. I mean, they're not totally pumped up. They don't have guns. They're actually like, they look like young men, right? Like nice, like young men, not overly pumped up. So we didn't want to like have them over sexualized or, and really play into that whole, the toy world where, they really, the way that they consider, oh, I'm sorry, there's someone at my door.
Do we need to pause?
It's like, this is COVID for you. Okay. Can I put you on hold for like 1 second, or
Please do.
how should we do this? Hold on a second. The only thing I can do is leave. Can I put it on stop video? Okay.
So as mentioned, you are on the WeFunder platform, which for those that aren't familiar with, there's a few out there. Well, I'll just mention WeFunder since that's the platform you're on, but there's a few of them that actually came out of the Jobs Act several years back. And it basically makes startup investing able to be done by just about anyone. You basically US citizen of a certain age, et cetera, but it's much more available for everyone to get involved with. So you again came up on my radar. When you're there, I was actually doing some research for a program we're trying to do to teach young people of using startup investing as a way to also learn. Because how do they learn without having a first experience how to be an entrepreneur, right? And I'm sure you could regale us with hours of things that experience taught you that you would rather have learned without the experience of it. That's at least my experience is the bumps and bruises you get along the way. So if you can see somebody else successfully doing it and understand how that's done, and certainly with SmartBuddies in your company, you're a good example of communicating, being out there in the marketplace, then using WeFunder. So when I speak of that, what are the key factors that you would say investors have asked and wanted to know about of SmartBuddies?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the reasons why we do crowdfunding and not only just look at venture capital and others, I mean, we do have investors like Morgan Stanley and NYU investment fund as well. So it's not only just crowd funds, but we have about 2,000 investors through the crowd. And I think that if you have a company that is very public, that has a consumer product that people can identify with, that maybe they can like touch and feel or download and experience, then it makes it easier for you to instead of like a B2B product, which might be more difficult to sell on crowdfunding. That's why we chose it and why we were successful at it. I also like the fact that we have these fans who do more than just invest money in us. They actually participate by helping us with for example, finding schools that might be interested in using our products, recommendations to friends and family, sharing coupons with their loved ones for products for the holidays, things like that. So, I'd say that investor engagement is really important for us, and being able to have these fans is great. We'd love to be able to use them even more. So, if, for example, we're able to do some kind of entertainment opportunity, then investors would be like the first ones to get a chance at joining that entertainment opportunity, with tickets or discounts to tickets, things like that. So I'd say like there's definitely the current VC model, in my opinion, is totally broken. Women get less than 2% of funding, and women of color get less than like 0.5%. So if you want to be an entrepreneur and you don't look like the traditional white dude from Stanford who's an engineer, then you're gonna have to look elsewhere. And especially because I was a hardware company, like it's even harder to attract American investors. There's a lot of Chinese investors who like hardware. So venture capital just wasn't it wasn't the right place for me to be looking for funding. Things will change now because of the platform that we're building and that we're working with the National Science. We're working with NYU, and hopefully we'll be getting a National Science Foundation grant for. And we think that might attract additional VC fundings in the future. But for now, crowdfunding has been great for us, and wonderful opportunity.
Excellent. Yeah, I think sometimes overlooked is the opportunity to be on a platform and be seen more. And as you mentioned, to grow your fan base, which is important as a startup.
Yeah.
Would you say with the investors that, and maybe we could talk early, Shark Tank, to some of the more recent you've had to now being on WeFunder, are they past performance oriented to look at what you have as a product? Or are they forward looking of, I see the opportunity that Sharma and team can produce in the future?
I'd say for in the beginning, it's all about like the team and your vision and how you're able to sell it. So those are like your early investors. I mean, we're a little bit later stage, so we have like sold 36,000 products. We do have more than 2 million in revenue, so it definitely helps. I mean, you're definitely more established. As you go on, and it makes it a little bit easier because then people feel like, oh, okay, you're not gonna just not be able to deliver, or not you're gonna disappear tomorrow or something like that. So they're like the more established companies are a safer place to be, but also the valuation of the company is higher. So I mean, our valuation is almost 9 million because we've been in the game for a couple of years now. We have like a we have a history of of revenue, and we have a team that has shown that we can actually bring the products forward into the marketplace. So but are they I would say that crowd investors are a little bit more forgiving. They go for what they like and what they understand, and they're not as aggressive as I'd say someone from private equity or venture capital, where because like they lose so many bets and they invest so much that they need to make 10 times what they invest on the winner. So like, so you have to show them this unicorn, and everyone talks about the unicorn. And and crowdfunding, we don't talk about unicorns because people are interested in investing in sustainable good companies that have at least for us, we're an impact company. I mean, we're trying
Yes.
to like, bridge a gap in, diversity. And so you should invest because you know that your money is safe with us. You know that we're trying to do good in the community. We're trying to make a difference, but we're also a for-profit company. So that means that, as you said, we pay taxes and, we can grow and scale because I worked for nonprofit. I was in nonprofit for 10 years and you were so dependent on donors. And many of them came back to us like, after 5, 6, 7 years and said, okay, we're tired of writing you guys checks. So, how can you generate your own funds now? People really value what you're making. Why don't they pay for it? And so it's difficult, as someone who was, from nonprofit to go to for profit, but still like be able to, to give like the kinds of numbers that VCs are looking for. And it's because of the model that they have to be like that. You can definitely, I would say that crowdfund investors, they invest less, so the risk is less. So that, if a company does go under, I mean, okay, so you lost $100, you lost $250 or $500. Okay, no big deal, right? It's not going to put anyone under for that. But, for the big VC companies who've invested, $100 million, it's another story. So.
Yes. Yeah, and SmartBuddies, as well as many other on the WeFunder platform, I'll point out, you can get in for as little as $100. So it's not like there's any huge risk happening. And in full disclosure, I may not have said before, I am an investor. So thank you for creating the product and founding this. And thanks to your daughter, your husband, and everything that's going on. But I see the potential is exactly as you mentioned. I believe there's a profit benefit here, but the social impact is in a way as much or more important, right? You can put your money in and invest it elsewhere for pure money, but to make a change that's beneficial is a huge reason why a lot of folks do invest in some of these investments. So switching a bit, let me see what my next question was. So what are the strengths that you think were the most beneficial when you had to pitch that you brought to the table?
I would say, fearlessness, basically. So, I mean, you have to really just practice your pitch, so you're talking about Shark Tank, right? So with Shark
Yes.
Tank, I mean, literally, like I practiced my pitch at least 1,000 times. Like, I was saying it to myself in the shower. Like I would just pitch to, anybody in the street. I would just like, I was just pitching and pitching and pitching and pitching because you just want to be, you want to internalize it. It needs to be under your skin. You need to be able to just, say it no matter what. If somebody is, in your face and screaming at you, you're still pitching away.
Right.
Like shouldn't rattle you. You shouldn't be able to like lose your focus on it. So I would say like, yeah, I mean, because it is a little bit scary in there. And, it's funny because I was really afraid of being in the tank because they make it out to look so cold and dark and,
Right.
frightening. But when you're in there, it's actually lovely because of all the lights and everything. So you feel, and they're all like lit up like gods, so
Yes.
they look like, and you feel like, oh, okay, it's a very heavenly experience in the tank. So.
Interesting. Yeah, you wouldn't know that on the other side of the TV
No,
watching it, right? You have to experience it.
exactly. No, it's a very comfortable place to be. So, and you're in there for a long time. I mean, I think I was in with the sharks for about an hour or so.
Excellent. Yeah, again, you don't see what gets edited to see what
No,
had to go
exactly.
into the whole thing. So I guess the last question I'd want to ask along this subject is, so of recent times, Shark Tank has been on for years, but the platforms such as WeFunder are within maybe 3 years old. So what do you see as pro for future entrepreneurs that want to use these platforms versus are there challenges that you see that they'll create for the entrepreneur?
I mean, I would say that, I love these platforms. I think they're amazing. And, it's such a great opportunity for especially founders of color and founders, who are women who, wouldn't normally be accepted or be welcomed by like the venture capital community. So, it's a great place for that. And as I said, you also get to build a community as well, which is really important in entrepreneurship. The SEC is now opened up. I don't know if you know this, but the SEC is now
Yes.
opened up opportunities for funding. So now you can raise
Yes.
up to 5 million. So it's like, why would you go to a venture capital company? I mean, they give you terrible, they give you terrible rates sometimes. I mean, they're really aggressive, and sometimes they'll even close you down or potentially even, remove the founder from, the founding team. So,
Yes.
a lot of dangerous things can happen with them. So, I mean, now that the SEC has changed that, they haven't come back with what is going to be required in order for you to be able to raise that kind of funding. But before, you had to do something called a Reg A, and that was
Yes.
just a really like a very long and expensive uh, yeah, I don't know, process with
Right.
lots of lawyers, and potentially like could cost between $50,000 and $100,000 to do all the paperwork for. So I'm hoping that with crowdfunding, that with the new 5 million ceiling, they'll be able to make that process a lot smoother. So today you can raise up to 1,047,000. So
Right. Yeah. And the other thing that some people may not realize about the platforms is that if you had 1,000 investors in your company, you would likely go nuts, right?
mhm,
Somewhere, if you get 20, it becomes a problem. But the way it works is there's a lead investor, and the however many thousands of investors you have now behind them are basically one entity that the founder has to deal with. So it's not, that you have to, answer my call, and if I'm not happy on a Friday at 8 o'clock, right? So that makes it, that's two-way street too. It also means that when I fund something, things come to me and say, hey, here's a change happening. It's gotten extended. This is happening. I just have to recertify and send it back. There's no forms I have to go through.
mhm,
So it's really used technology to take a lot of the barriers out of the way so
yeah,
that, as you mentioned, anyone can start something. So um, anyone with passion, anyone that's willing to invest the time, and anyone
yeah.
that, has the ability, I should say, not just anyone. Um,
Yeah, but crowdfunding is not, it's not easy. I mean, you definitely have to, I would say they recommend that you come with your crowd, so, I
right.
wouldn't
Yes.
recommend that anybody just with an idea, goes to one of these sites, because you'll be very disappointed and walk away with like nothing, because like
Yes.
their crowd doesn't get excited until you reach a certain minimum. So you kind of you have to start much earlier, making
Right.
sure that you actually have like enough investors to have a base. So there's tricks, and there's tips and tricks to everything, and the same thing with crowdfunding. It's definitely doable, but just plan for it, read about it. You can find a lot of great articles and interviews online about crowdfunding, and how to get started. So
Excellent. Yes, appreciate the personal story and the advice from
mhm.
you. That's very helpful. So switching topics a bit to mentoring and how we can help the younger folks aspiring to walk in your shoes and walk the path, or a path similar, hopefully not the same. I want to go back a bit, if I may,
Sure.
to your student days and ask, what was your favorite subject in, say, middle school, high school, the age that your product is targeting?
Hmm. I loved biology. So I was a really, a big fan of biology. I loved it. I loved the concept of it. I loved the fact that we had, opportunities to go out into nature and,
Right.
pick things from nature and be able to take it back into the lab and take a look at it under a microscope. And so, so biology was definitely a favorite subject, but it wasn't, and I never, even though I was, I really loved biology, no one really encouraged me to do anything with it. And again, this is, I don't want to blame anybody. I mean, I think if I really wanted to, I probably could have do it, but I just didn't see myself in it. You just don't see a lot of female biologists, and even today, with everything that I know and have learned, if somebody says doctor, the first thing I think of is, a white male and in a lab coat. And, those things are hard to change, even with, everything that we work with on a daily basis. they're just things that you learn as a young child, and images of what you consider to be yeah, and then get these potentially images from media and elsewhere, and then in daily life get underpinned. So
Right. So if we can again go back to that younger girl aspiring, what would you say were some influences or experience that at the time you had never known it, but now it led you to where you are, that somehow may have changed your path?
I mean, I don't know if a lot from my younger years. I mean, the only thing that what I just remember very clearly, like what I knew in fourth grade. I don't know why, but I just remember like what I could do, and things that I had learned, and it was kind of an important turning point in school, where in fourth grade, that's really when you need to like know your multiplication, in and out, and be able to have it under your skin. And if you don't, then you lose your place in math, really, because some of those things, even though we hate to have to force kids to memorize, if you don't memorize it, you're just going to be much slower, and and all the math that builds on it. So math does build on itself. So I just remember thinking back then about how important it was for me to learn these things, because I was afraid of what might happen if I didn't, right? So fear factor were a lot of things that, and I think I still have that fear factor today of math. So of not being able to know enough, making sure that one calculation could could ruin your spreadsheet or your budget. So yeah, I would say that's
Um, and then the next question I would say is, where you are now as CEO, would you say, if you could take the time machine back to that young you, of here's what you're doing right, Sharmi, here's what you might want to change in the future? Anything come to mind?
Hmm, that's a good question, actually. I would say that, one thing that I didn't, I mean, I was a great student up until high school. And then I kind of, really enjoyed my high school years as a partier.
Okay.
So, and it kind of, I mean, I regret it in so many ways, because I do think that that's such an essential time. And and your first college, and what college you go to will be affected by your high school grades. So up until then, it doesn't really matter, but once you get to high school, it does. So I would basically like send a note to my to my younger self and say, hey, party less in high school, really focus on getting those great grades, so you can go to like the university that you really want to, and be able to study where you wanted to go to. I mean, the other day I was interviewed. I've been invited to speak at Harvard, Duke, NYU, and they are also an investor, Princeton.
Yes.
And you go to these fantastic places that I couldn't, like, because my high school grades were so poor, I couldn't never imagine going to. So and then they invite me as a speaker, and I'm just like, I go there, and I'm like thinking, gosh, I wish I could have gone here, and I just missed it, so. But never too late. I'm actually considering, even at my age, I'm considering that one day, like once everything's done and dusted, that I will go back and and go to Stanford, or Yale, or one of the others that I had always wanted to go to, and reapply, because I think that life experience matters. And they'll look at me and go like, wow, okay, she did it. We'll take her as an honorary student. So
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, you look at Bill Gates, you never know where those honorary degrees may come from. Um, so I guess in closing up this section on mentorship, so talking to other business owners, parents, I know, raising children has always been the challenge of not being the helicopter parent versus also being there to at least show paths forward of where do you do it. And I like using example as pretty much how I did it. And I love your company for that. I think it will add an example to a lot of young people. But to those business owners and parents, are there any thoughts that you might convey about how we can be better mentors to young people without being the helicopter or the total apathy?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of programs that we work with, including like Boys and Girls Club and others where, you can go and be, a big brother or a big sister to a child and really, give them experiences. And I think that those are so essential. We do it through, some of our programs with Black Girls Code and with the Girl Scouts of America. But, those kinds of organizations I think are key because kids are only in school 20% of the time. So what are they doing for the rest of their hours? And, do they have, adults who can help mentor them and, inspire them? Many of them don't have that. So, how do we provide those kinds of experiences for them? I think is really important. And the more that we can do in the after school space, especially with, underserved learners, I think is really essential. So.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And I will be posting along with this. You have a TED Talk. That's an excellent
Oh,
talk.
sure.
I've seen it
Oh,
several
thank you.
times.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
And I encourage folks to look at your TED Talk. We'll also be posting the Shark Tank season 9 episode. I'm looking at my notes, 10, and also your WeFunder link. So I wish you the best of success. When does this campaign actually end?
Right now it's ending in January, but
Okay.
yeah, we never know. We might extend it. So, but for now, it's ending in January. So, yeah, we'll have to get through the Christmas season and now Thanksgiving. I mean, it's been like one after the other. I mean, we started a little bit late, unfortunately, and then hit election season. So, but yeah, in January, probably the first week of January.
Excellent. And looking at your product that you showed us before, and you were talking about boys getting more involved than you thought,
Mm.
I immediately looked at it and said, as a motorcycle rider, a bicycle rider, it's got wheels. That was the
Mm.
first thing I saw. So excellent. Appreciate everything you've done. Look forward to seeing where things are in another year and 2 years and 5 years and see where you go with this. Thank you so much for your time, Sharmi.
Great. Thank you. Bye-bye.